everyone, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Paranormal Minds. I'm your host, Shannon Ray, and this evening I am joined with very special guest, Brad Steiger. Steiger's first published article on the unexplained appeared in 1956, and he has now written more than 2,000 articles with paranormal themes. From 1970 to 73, his weekly newspaper column, The Strange World of Brad Steiger, was carried domestically in over 80 newspapers and overseas from Bombay to Tokyo. He was born in Fort Dodge, Iowa on February 19, 1936. He is married to Sherry, herself the author or co-author of over 40 books. From the mid-1980s through 2002, they lectured and conducted sermons throughout the United States and overseas. They have 2 sons, 3 daughters, and 9 grandchildren, 8 girls and 1 boy. Brad guests on many radio programs in numerous cities throughout the United States, and he is a regular on Jeff Rense's Sightings on the Radio, George Norrie's Coast to Coast. He has been interviewed and featured in articles in the New York Times, Los Angeles Herald Examiner, San Francisco Chronicle, Arizona Republic, Chicago Tribune, Chicago Sun-Times, Milwaukee, Seattle, Baltimore News American, Las Vegas Sun, and many more. And here tonight to talk about his new book, which I have right here, Real Encounters, Different Dimensions, and Otherworldly Beings. I would like, without further ado, to welcome Brad. How are you doing?
Just doing fine, Shannon. It's a pleasure to be on your program.
I'm super excited, and I want to let everybody know, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, shoot them into the chat box if you don't think I'm asking the exact question you want to hear, and I will be more than happy to ask Mr. Brad, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to oblige.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, so I kind of wanted to start off with, how did you become such an amazing author? I mean, what kind of first inspired you to be an author?
I guess other than being a cowboy when I was little, I've never wanted to be anything else. I was born and reared in a haunted house. It had been the old stagecoach stop, and such luminaries as Jesse James and the Dalton brothers and so forth had stayed there. And my sister and I would be awakened at night by these people in period costume. We didn't know it was period at that time. We just thought they were funny dressed, walking across our bedroom. As the energy possessed I don't know, here we can talk a lot tonight about what a haunting is, but I think in many cases it's an energy that's impressed on the environment. So this was obviously the case here. We did not live in the stagecoach stop. It had been torn down and a new house had been built. Now, we eventually tore that house down, built a new one, and we still heard the sound of a stagecoach and horses coming down the lane at night. And, we'd all get up and say, what is it now? We'd run to the windows, and of course, it would just be the sound of the horses panting and the stagecoach and so forth. So somehow that energy got impressed in the environment, and as a young lad, I was impressed by that environment. Now, the interesting thing, you see, for a ghost researcher, it put me on both a positive path and one that proved to be probably a little risky later on, because seeing ghosts all my life, I thought, they don't hurt me. Sometimes they startle me when I walk a corner and there I see the shadow of a big tall man standing in front of me. It startles me, but they don't hurt me. Mm-hmm. Now, when later in life, when I was conducting investigations all over the US of A, I ran into some cases where what I dealt with was obviously not some energy impressed on the environment, but a very real energy that sometimes could be very violent, like pushing a person around and knocking doors off the hinges. So I've had to revise my theory of what ghosts are. And, I have like 8 categories now, and it may all be one. It may be, and here's something I think we have to think about. How a ghost appears may depend a lot upon who's perceiving the ghost, who's seeing the ghost. In other words, it may, what you see may be, who you are, or what you get is who you are. So there's so many aspects of this, as I'm sure you're finding out in your own research.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned you had 8 different kind of classifications for spirit. Would you mind going a little bit further into that?
Well, there again, you see, we have the category of, and I won't run through all 8, but just generally, where it is an energy that is superimposed on an environment. It can be spirits of the deceased, which you see, I didn't include that when I began. I thought survival after death was a different category, but now I include them in what ghosts can be. And then we have to, as we do in the current book, Real Encounters, suggest that some of these may not truly be ghosts at all, but other dimensional, multi-dimensional entities that have quite a different purpose in mind or function in mind. And they could be, as I said, not the deceased, but they could be entities unto themselves that somehow manifest and appear to perhaps instruct us, to give us information, or who knows. There is also, and we hate to mention this, but there's also the demonic. They could be demonic entities. Mm-hmm. And we do have to recognize that such entities do exist. They may be there, and you'd better be careful. You don't open yourself up to them. I think that's a danger right now, if I may speak as an ancient one compared to soon to be 78. I think so many of the current researchers open themselves up or say, I am here, talk to me, come talk to me. That might not always be such a good idea because and again, when I began bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I definitely thought evil really didn't exist. This was just an interpretation. Well, I have since learned, sometimes to my detriment, that evil does exist. There are entities that really can feed upon our energy, and we have to constantly be aware of that. Now, again, I'm not going strict religion on anybody. I'm just saying common sense. You don't come up to a stranger on the street and say, here am I'm yours, if you don't know that person. Yeah. Well, why should you, if you hear a moaning, groaning at night, say, hey there, are you there? I'm so-and-so, come to me. You may not, you better survey the situation first.
Yeah, I would agree with that, absolutely, because, without trying to survey and research and grab a broader picture of what you're walking into, you could really be walking into something that's going to bite you in the butt, and so to speak,
or elsewhere.
Exactly, so to speak. So you got
the bite in the butt you might be able to take, but a bite in the spirit you might not be able to.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. So speaking of your book, you just mentioned it again, and I'm going to show it right now for all of us watching. It's Real Encounters, Different Dimensions, and Otherworldly Beings. I got a press release copy, which I greatly appreciate, and I read it, and it's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the website for Brad is up on your page, and it's been up on your page throughout the night, and it'll continue to be up on your page. It's www.bradandsherry.com. Can they order the book from that website?
No, we don't carry books, but they can go, of course, to all the electronic bookstores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, there are so many of them. Or, don't desert your local bookstore. Support that local bookstore.
Absolutely. Do support your local bookstore if they carry it. If not, like he was saying, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. If you're like a really big computer junkie and you never like to leave your house, Amazon is your friend. Okay, so let's talk about the book. Can you take a moment just to kind of give a brief synopsis of the book?
Yes, what we're doing, and then we just got a review today that said we try to create a unified field theory of the supernatural, the paranormal, the unknown, and we really like that because that's what we're trying to do, because we're looking at the phenomena from the viewpoint that we may truly not know what we are dealing with. I alluded to that earlier about being cautious. So, but we do recognize, whether you say that you've seen an alien or a ghost, an angel, or whatever, the person who has had that experience has had his or her concept of reality forever changed, forever expanded. And many people, and we hear from them every day, literally, consider this encounter, and there comes real encounters, to be a life-altering experience, an illumination, even an epiphany. Some go on a religious path, but certainly some are stimulated to say there is more to this reality than we are led to believe. There is more to this reality, and how do we even define true reality than we're told in our textbooks and as we're told in our lectures and classes. So after we've been engaged in this for so long, Shannon, we decided to do the entire gamut. And some reviewers have said, we touch on so many different areas, and that was deliberate to show that we really do not precisely know what's going on in either one, and is there really an intelligence that ever since man stood upright, and perhaps even before the human species stood upright, has been interacting with us. Some level of intelligence that can appear in whatever guise would speak to the individual percipient as to there's something beyond me, there's something more to my reality. So that's what the book wants to do, is to show how all of these things are really tools, psychic tools that we use to explore and develop who we really are and recognize the potential of who we may be.
Now, within the book, Sherry and you explore more than 130 claims. How did you go about identifying claims that are worthy of the book?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that at first. Yeah, the claims that we use in the book. All right, we have to have some concept of who the person is. And I think you may know that we've had a questionnaire, the Steiger questionnaire of UFO paranormal. It began as the Star Person questionnaire, but we've been sending this out since the 1960s. We've had like 40,000 of them now from all countries, because we are so grateful, we are so fortunate, and that our books are published in nearly every country, or they're accessible in every country. So we continue to give this information. Now, we don't, put anyone on the rack. We don't interrogate. We recognize that any person sincerely relating an experience, this is an individual mystical experience. It has meaning, relevance to that individual. Now, after over 50 years in this field, Shannon, I don't say I can't be fooled, but people can't just come to me with any story. Mm-hmm. And Sherry worked with Dr. J. Ellen Hynek, and it was her job to interview people who had experiences and try to, not strenuously, but try to separate the wheat from the chaff. And that's what we do. So the people who write to us sincerely explaining, and some we are surprised because they're individuals we have known in some particular aspect of society, and we're surprised when they confess, so to speak, using that term, the experience that they've had that has led them to their success in business or their success as a human being in relationships. So we don't necessarily, though we have, we in the past, we traveled, as I say, literally all over this North American continent and South America and overseas, doing investigations, doing the analysis, interviewing people. But now we have the questionnaire, and we have people just sending us, and most people do provide a background, and sometimes we ask them to. But again, that's how we collect it. Good people revealing themselves, unveiling themselves to us. Many people do not wish their names known. We give them a pseudonym or just use a first name to encourage people, to really say what happened. Don't hold back, and don't try to make it sound good because you think someone you know might read it. But, just really reveal. And as I say, these are all individual mystical experiences. So it's not up to us to say, well, I think this is not true. I don't think you had this experience. That would be insulting the individual.
Absolutely.
So we're not then setting this up and saying, each experience has been thoroughly tested, but from our standpoint, we have the veracity of the individual, the dignity of the individual, and the validity of that individual to speak his or her own truth.
Okay. Now, excuse me, we do have a question from the chat room, and it's going to kind of slide off base from the book real quick, but I do want to go ahead and ask.
Sure.
Do you currently still personally ghost hunt, and where and how often? Any personal experiences?
We do not at the present time. Well, let's say on a very limited basis, where it's accessible to us. We advise continuously. I mean, not a day goes by that we don't hopefully help people. Some people are, just let me digress a moment, Shannon.
Okay, absolutely.
There seems to be a lot of people who feel they're being afflicted by demonic entities or negative entities. We just are flooded by that. Now, I don't know if that reflects the chaos of the present time we're in, or if this reflects, as some people believe, that, and I guess we peripheral believe, that we are approaching a time of change, a time in which the spiritual climate is accelerating. Or as Sherry likes to say, the veil is thinning. The veil between worlds is thinning. So we spend a lot of time. We have a series of exercises, techniques, if you will, whatever you want to call it, that have worked very well for us in working with hundreds of people. And we send that out, to people who say, I'm afflicted at night, this entity comes, tears my bedclothes off, and, frightens the children. And the sense of panic and sincerity and the desperateness of the people who write these letters. Please, please help me. So we have these series of exercises that we send to people who are being afflicted. I just wanted to digress and ask you, in your research, are you running into more people claiming they're having demonic or negative confrontations?
Here's the thing, and just to be completely honest, I find people have the claims that they say that, but then once we're within the home and we, do the interview and we do the investigation and we start getting claims and things of that nature, it's really not, it's not demonic. It's just spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I personally believe, you know, nobody in the world has to agree with me, but I personally believe the word demonic is so loosely used now due to the fact that it is used so frequently on television now.
Right.
And it's all promoted as being that. Now, in retrospect to something else that you said, I personally as well do believe that the veil is thinning. I've noticed as years have gone by, because I've had my paranormal group now since 2008, and I've been in this field since I was 16, but I didn't have my own group until I was 21. So, you know, but anyways, I've noticed as years have gone by, there's more and more activity and legitimate activity, not just people saying that it's there, it's really there.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that's the veil thinning, or maybe, you know, with the TV and national exposure that paranormal stuff gets now, people aren't ashamed anymore. So there's kind of like a double-edged knife there, in my opinion. I'm not really, it's hard to say.
I was just going to say, that's a double-edged sword, isn't it? And you may have put your finger on, because, as I say, it's just recently we get all these claims of, and as you say, demonic. It takes a great deal for Sherry myself to say something is demonic, but people use that term. Maybe you put your finger out, because to be honest, we don't watch those programs. We started watching a few of them, and we thought, you know, this is we just don't relate to the techniques or the programs and so forth. We'll catch one once in a while, but that may be where it's coming from, if these individuals say something is demonic, because again, coming from very traditional backgrounds, in fact, both of us come from the evangelistic backgrounds, though you wouldn't know it today perhaps, but again, demonic means something very horrendous and special to us, and that may be why people, to us, you know, they're negative experiences, they're misinterpreted, they're spooky experiences, but if there's a big influx of programs stressing demonic, you know, you wonder again, I'm sure these are not evangelicals who are going out investigating haunted houses, but certainly we have to always concede that there is the negative. There is the negative that does exist in this world. You don't have to be very astute or aware to know that there is negativity happening all the time, and that we should recognize we are workers of the light and do our best to banish that.
I agree with that 110%. It's just I personally believe that the demonic occurrence is a rare occurrence. I'm not saying it's unrealistic. It's very realistic. I've read case files and I've talked to people that have had experiences, but it's very rare. And I personally, there's so many shows on out there that I do not like personally, but I still watch them because I feel like it's kind of my duty to keep, since I have a show, it's kind of my duty to see what people are putting out there everywhere. And all I gotta say is every Friday night you turn it on to Travel Channel and there's three guys, and anything that's negative, it's demonic. They don't even use the word negative anymore. It's demonic. Everything's and it's not that way. But that's what it's conceiving to the popular public. And
well, thank you. You would probably explain that, because we thought, why is such an influx coming all of a sudden?
That's exactly why.
Yeah, we agree with you. You know, it has to be an extreme situation before you say a demon, as it were. Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly why. And I've had, maybe out of this whole entire year, all the cases that we've had, I'd say a good 70% of them, when the client first contacted me, they said, I have a demon in my house. Mm-hmm. And none of them have. So, you know, it's just it's the way it's being pushed and perceived to the public currently.
That is really doing a disservice to people.
Oh, it is. It's making the general public
Some of these people are panic-stricken. I mean, and because, as you say, you know, when you think of a demon, you think of something, you know, that cannot be conquered. You know, you think of something that requires 20 days of exorcism or whatever. So that we appreciate that. That explains why, and that will help guide us we still will send out our exercises, because in either event, those exercises do work and they do help. And even if it's psychologically, you know, at least it will help people to deal with what they feel they're up against.
And I think that's an important thing, is just helping people deal with what they're up against and helping them become better aware and better educated than what the mainstream media is forcing them to see right now.
Amen.
Personal opinion, like I've said, I say this every week on this show, Mr. Brad. I tell you, I'm like, if you don't agree with me, I'm sorry, but it's just kind of how I feel. So people don't have to agree with me. It's okay. So in regards to the book, could the idea of wormholes and extra-dimensional portals explain spirits and aliens altogether?
You say wormholes and portals?
Yes, extra-dimensional portals and things of that nature in the overlying of different dimensions. Could that explain spirits and aliens together? All together?
Well, it could. It could. These are theories that are presented to explain some of the manifestations. You know, Shannon, I think we'd be very hard-pressed to come up with a single theory that works in every instance. You agree?
I agree, 100%.
Yeah. So we present a number of theories that seem to be applicable in certain cases, but may not apply to others. On the other hand, maybe the multidimensional aspect, using it in its broadest sense, could explain everything. Everything is multidimensional. Survival after death, they're in another dimension now. Ghosts that appear, electronic elements impressed in the environment, that in a sense is multidimensional. So maybe that theory could explain many, and even aliens. Now, way back when Roswell occurred, and I was around when Roswell occurred, contrary to many investigators today, and there was a great excitement at that time, especially among us buffs of the paranormal and science fiction and so forth. They're here, they're really here. Hallelujah, spread the word. And we were very much the investigators at that time. We were all very much nuts and bolts. They come in machines. Now, in 1972 and 74, I wrote a number of books saying, you know, I'm not so sure they're all. I mean, I certainly believe in extraterrestrial life, that there's life elsewhere in the universe. But, you know, can we really accept that these entities, and then you look back and the smallish entities that are described, they are, I mean, you put a wax paper over and trace them, and they're fairies, they're elves, they're the same tradition that have been with us throughout our history. So it appears, and this is what we say in the book, it appears as though there is an intelligence that presents itself in many ways, angelic or fairies or someone. We appear to have cosmic cousins that exist with us, and some are in favor of getting together and helping us progress, and some prefer that we're kind of supplying energy to them, or even supplying individuals from time to time. So it's such a complicated thing that we feel, again, this is evolving, and to try to come up with one theory. But those are the theories now after 50-some years. I started, years ago, a magazine asked me, they were doing a survey of so-called experts. I don't know how you ever get to be an expert, but I was considered one of the experts they asked. And we were all supposed to give our one theory to explain UFOs. Well, I gave 17 theories that could explain what UFOs are. And that's pretty much the same attitude that I have, and thankfully Sherry does too. You know, we're explorers. We don't claim to have the answer. We have a lot of answers, and we present them, and then it's up to the reader to say, well, this one works for me. Not so much this one. This one better yet. You know, I think we have to stretch the mind, we have to stretch the consciousness before we're ever going to arrive at what's happening all around us every day and has for thousands of years.
Now, has there been evidence collected that supports the idea of undersea cities which hide advanced technology?
Why, that is such an intriguing area, the undersea cities. It's romantic, it's fantastical, and it seems to explain what's happening in our oceans. And recent reports, and interestingly, a lot of them come from the Russians, who have encountered them in their Great Lakes. They have several lakes, you know, that are very huge and very deep, and off their coast, in which people have seen underwater beings that can't quite tell if they have headsets on or if they're able to breathe. And I have a good friend who was in Special Forces, and he was in sort of the scuba aspect of things. He wasn't a SEAL, but in Special Forces he was, and he encountered such an entity with a glowing light at a deep, and you know, it wasn't a recognizable member of any military group of which he was aware. These things happen, and they happen. The Bermuda Triangle, which is, you know, you can argue back and forth if it's really a triangle, if it really exists. But there are an extraordinary, throughout history now, an extraordinary amount of ships and planes that have simply disappeared. Now we get reports from shrimp boat owners who claim to see these strange dotting lights under the water. Sometimes we get reports from shipboat owners or other fishermen who claim that they hit something that nearly pulled their vessel under and then took off. So it wasn't that they actually hooked on something and couldn't get loose, but something hooked on them. Is just to say, you know, stay out of this area, or maybe just playfully. But, you know, the crew surely wasn't laughing. They didn't see the choke in it, you know, they nearly pulled under. So these things, then the scientists, you know, they come up with every once in a while, you know, strange footprints at the bottom of the ocean, or individual, again, like submarines that no one knows what country they belong to. So we have a whole chapter just chock full of those kinds of stories, which, you know, proof to some people, but for us, it's just another area to tickle the brain and say what's really going on, and it's been going on for centuries. So we recognize, and many scientists have recognized, if alien life form would or could come to Earth, an ideal place for them to establish their bases would be underwater. We still haven't been to the depths of our oceans. We still haven't begun to catalog all the life forms in our ocean. We don't really know what's there in the various trenches. So again, we have accounts in the book of objects coming out of the sea. We saw that ourselves in South America. We were told by a shaman that if we'd come to this place, we had to practically be blindfolded so we wouldn't know where it was. But we ourselves saw objects, bright glowing objects coming out of the water and then flying around and entering the water. Was this some other life form? Well, you know, again, just kind of on a whim, Sherry tried communicating with them, and she'd say, now go left, now go right, now go up, now go down. And I was astonished. You know, the objects followed her mental command. She wasn't shouting, she was just thinking this. Now, what did we see that night? There were a number of, it was very cold, it was high in the Andes, and but native people were walking around us barefooted and so forth, you know, who came to see what they called angels. They called them angels, or at least in that village they called them angels. that came in and out of the water. So we know that it's, we theorize that it is possible that there are advanced life forms living in depths that we haven't identified yet.
Which, considering, like you mentioned, the vast amount of oceans and bodies of water that we have not fully explored, is completely plausible.
I always think, wow, we're really advancing, and then we'll get in one of our science magazines to which we subscribe, we'll see some figures, that we've barely entered the front door. I mean, we just don't know what's there.
So, what form or appearance do you believe visitors from other dimensions would be seen as?
Whatever you want.
So you think it's personally done with the person that's having the encounter?
Yes.
Do you think that's a conscious or unconscious choice?
It's unconscious, but it's who you are is what you get, I think, in a large number of cases. As we say in the book, we don't even know if this intelligence has a form, Shannon. It may be pure energy. It may be pure light. And it assumes whether you want the Virgin Mary or whether you want an elf or whether you want an alien visitor with all the appropriate accoutrements, that may be what you get.
Now, have you ever had personal experiences with something you believe was a dimensional being?
Oh, yes, many.
Would you mind telling, like, the one that sticks out in your head as the most, that had the most impact?
It's many times you don't realize you've had such a exposure until the retrospect, when you look back over it, where you entered let's say a diner, a roadside diner, and gone in, had a pleasant meal, exchanged niceties with the customers, and then next time you're in the area, you think you're going to stop there again, and there's no little diner there, and according to the locals, there never has been. So I think we have those experiences. As it says in the Bible, you will entertain angels unaware. And I think this has happened, to each of us before. Now, the most dramatic experiences I've had have been on the UFO side or on the ghost side, just to use the lack of a better term, where you're encountering something that, the one ghost instance, and I just happened to see on my Facebook, and you can check it there too, that a ghoster in Omaha or Lincoln or wherever mentions that they include the house that I had investigated with the psychic Irene Hughes. I noticed someone, Scott Colburn, put that on the Facebook, and I don't know if they're going inside because I'd heard that they don't allow anyone inside anymore. But this is a home where 3, possibly 4 horrible murders had taken place over the years. And when we investigated it, it was, the people living there, I don't know why they chose to live there at all, for all the manifestations they were going through, blood coming from the walls and voices and apparitions and so forth. And this is what really encouraged me to expand my thought beyond ghosts are a form of energy impressed on the environment. We were in the basement where one of the murders had occurred, and it was a back room. Now, the house was very old, and the basement floor had just the dirt, and then someone, obviously, sometime in the past, had poured cement over it. So it was very rough. It was very rough. And to close the door of this one murder room, we'll call it that, you had to push the door over a lump of cement, that hadn't been smoothed out. So it couldn't just close on its own. Mm-hmm. Well, while I was investigating the murder room, the door kept closing on me, moving over the rough spots. So a friend of mine, a former Green Beret and newspaper man, both good-sized guys, they held the door open while I was in there investigating and getting impressions and so forth, recording. Then when I left, I said, all right, the blankety-blank thing wants the door closed, close it. And they closed it and locked it. Well, we were upstairs then, and we heard this incredible sound in the basement of the door being just exploded off its hinges. Then we heard what sounded like King Kong coming up the basement stairs, and then all of us, and there were 6 or 7 of us, were lifted into the air and dropped. So that caused me to revise and saying, I've got 17 theories of UFOs. I'm going to have at least 8, 9, 10 theories of what ghosts can be.
Yeah. I think I would have pee-peed in my panties when that happened.
It was close.
I'm telling you. You're sitting there like telling that, like I'm getting goosebumps from you telling it. I'm just like, I probably would have had an accident and had to go to the bathroom.
Well, it certainly got all of our attention. There's no question about that. And in one sense, you see, I've been doing this for so long on an academic, intellectual level. And felt that I had everything pretty well worked out. So this was really a wake-up call for me. I mean, this was, as you say, it was a part of my thought was, this can't be.
Yeah.
Another part was, these things really do happen?
Yeah.
There really are hauntings like this?
Yeah.
And then, of course, it seemed that just opened up the door for a number of those kinds of hauntings. It was as if, I had to graduate to a different class of inquiry and to be prepared for what I would meet later on in life.
And I don't know if I'm ready for that graduation yet. I'm going to have to think about that one. So when, in regards to various dimensions, we're basically talking about a total altered reality from what we are currently aware of, or a majority of the population is currently aware of. Would this make us less evolved, scientifically speaking?
No. I think it has nothing to do with that, Shannon. I think it exists. We enter into it from time to time. It's a whole question, what is time? There's one of the greatest mysteries, and it remains unsolved. What is time? Is time another dimension? Do we really progress? Can there be no time or all time? How do these exist? How do we go back to the past? Now, we've worked a lot with hypnotic regression way long before it became popular.
Yeah.
And we would send people back to historical, and we did this on ABC, live TV. We sent a subject back we were challenged to do this without any warning. There were 3 Lincoln experts on stage, had no idea who these 3 men were. And then we were asked to regress, our subject to Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and describe it as it took place. Now, this was cold. We had no preparation. There's no way we could have briefed in any way our subject. Our subject was a friend of mine, a very delightful wife of a friend of mine, and she has no advanced education. So we regressed her back to Gettysburg, and she said that she saw it through the eyes of a little girl standing in front. And she described every motion that Lincoln made. Now, when they came back, the Lincoln scholars were astonished because they said that they had studied every sort of monograph and historical reference to what Lincoln's movements were. And through regression, she described exactly when he took the note out, when he adjusted his spectacles, when he stood back. I mean, just as if she were seeing it live. They agreed they could not explain it. They knew that she was not a Lincoln expert, and she, for all intents and purposes, went back to the Gettysburg Address. Now, how did she do that? Is time, can certain aspect of our psyche look into time and space? Can we select this? Can we, just like a video, bring it back, a snatch? Starting with time as a dimension, what is it? And then we have so many other aspects, and then we have quantum physics telling us how many things can happen at the same time, or reverse time, or out of time. See it, think. And we're just beginning to explore these things that have been so real to us as a species for thousands of years.
Now, we do have another question from our chat box. How do you compare dimensions to the entire universe? How does all that kind of tie in and fit in together?
Oh, I would have no idea. We're just beginning. I think anyone who would answer that would be suspect at this time, if I understand the question. The universe is the great unknown. I mean, this is something, probably as all college kids, my roommate and I used to lie on our bunks and imagine infinity, imagine the universe. And, you go so far and your mind just blanks out. It just blocks itself. So Sherry and I look often, at the various literature we get from different scientific publications and saying this is where the brain just stops. Now, if you're talking about the other dimensions, here, as I've suggested, and people have picked up on that in the reviews, is rather than travel through space, we find a way to simply avoid space. And that's obviously what we do with the psyche at this time. So maybe the first space travelers or multidimensional travelers, maybe we'll find a way that the techniques that I've been using and Sherry and I have been using and others have been using, maybe we can find a way to actually put them into a scientific or an aspect, an avenue, a venue that the scientists will say, yes, this is science. And maybe that will be the first space travelers. I mean, maybe that's how we will travel through space mentally, because we're doing it now. We're doing it mentally. Ingo Swann was a good friend of mine, and he found a way that he projected things in his mind that have since found to be true. Many other dear psychics whom I work with who have now gone to the Great Mystery did the same and record things that were later found. So I don't really know if I've answered that question, but I don't think I can. I don't think anyone can at this moment.
Yeah, and I believe that's a humble perspective of it completely, because if we had all the answers and we could tell the great mysteries of the universe, neither you nor I would have a job.
or we would have a really good job.
Exactly. Precisely. So I do kind of want to switch gears for just a moment, but I do want to mention the book one more time. I'm holding it up right now. Real Encounters, Different Dimensions, and Otherworldly Beings. Awesome book. Gotta read it. Gotta buy it. It's amazing. Go to Amazon or your local bookstore, Barnes & Nobles, Books A Million, things of that nature. Okay, Mr. Brad, so any kind of big things that you guys have coming up soon that you'd like to talk about?
Well, we just keep working, Shannon. We're devoted to this. We get requests every week to lecture, do seminars, do television programs, and so forth. At this time in our life, we are concentrating on our research. We're concentrating on writing what we feel are the very best books that we can. And it's that time of our life, is a time of reflection and putting into tangible form what we have learned, what we have experienced, so that hopefully others can gain some benefit from it.
Which is humbling as well. So are you guys working on another book currently?
Well, we have a couple ideas, and we're not ready to talk about them yet, but we certainly will keep you informed when they begin to congeal.
Absolutely. I'd be excited to learn what's coming next personally. So for sure. When I got this book in the mail, I was like ecstatic and like went home and read almost the whole thing that night.
Great.
It was kind of nerdy of me, but I did it.
We really appreciate that, Shannon, because we think this book is very important. I've authored or co-authored almost 180 books now, and I consider this one of the very most important books that I've done, and I couldn't have done it without Sherry. And I feel that we both feel that there's so much of us in this book. For the first time, we're sharing our personal experiences, and we're correlating all this material in what we hope is kind of we just got a nice review, I may have mentioned, that called the book an attempt at a unified field theory of the paranormal. And boy, that reviewer just hit it right on the head. That's what we're trying to do. And I appreciate the opportunity to come on your program and discuss it.
I truly am honored and humbled to have you on 100%. And I also want to just mention the book, with personally reading it and everything. It truly takes a humbled and challenging perspective approach to certain perspectives within the paranormal field, and that's what I liked about it. Is it's not cookie cutter.
Thank you.
Because cookie cutter paranormal books put me to sleep, but I act like I had to finish reading this or I was going to die.
No,
I'm kidding. I was being a little bit sarcastic, but I wasn't going to die. But I had to finish reading it. I just tell my husband, that I have to finish reading things or I might die, so he'll leave me alone about it. He's like, "Honey, are you going to do the clothes?" "Yeah, after I read this, or I might die." You know how that goes.
I know how that goes. I do indeed.
But Brad, I want to thank you so much for being on, and thank you again for the book. And you got everyone watching, once again, this is the book, Real Encounters, Different Dimensions, Otherworldly Beings. Check it out, like I said, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you are interested in finding out more about Brad and Sherry, their website is above my head at the moment. It is www.bradandsherry.com. Write that down. Don't forget it. Next week, tune in as I will be talking with special guest Marie D. Jones about a few of her books. Once again, Brad, thank you so much for being on. I really do appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, and Sherry says to send her very best as well.
Tell her I wish I could have met her, but very nice of her to do that as well, and I send mine as well.
Okay.
Once again, everybody, be sure to tune in right here to Paranormal Minds next week. Same time, same place. Catch you then.